Feet to the Fire Radio presents Christianity, the Red Letter Edition. We are here to strip away the denominational dogma, the religious theater, and the cultural masks and go straight to the source. We are examining the teachings of Jesus through the lens of the original Hebrew and Greek, the historical reality of the first century, and the absolute necessity of applying these truths to our lives today. We aren't here to coddle the ego or rehearse safe, church-approved talking points. We are here to seek the truth via the path of non-contradiction. Jesus exhorted Peter, "I will give you keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." What exactly did he mean by bind and loosen? Jesus' words were not the historical critique of the Pharisees. It is a mirror to our own hearts. It is time to start preparing our hearts for the kingdom by putting our feet to the fire, kindled by the red letters of Jesus Christ. All right, we are back and we are live. Feet to the Fire. This is the Red Letter Edition. Feet to the Fire. Christianity, the Red Letter Edition. And I was working on it today. Got my show notes. I do have it listed when you either look at the description or if you go, if you download, look at the description. You can get the download for, hold on, let me turn something off here. One second. That's just great. Boom. There we go. All right. You can download the show notes. I recommend it because it has quotes and whatnot in there. You can download that and go along with this. This is a series I've done. I've been wanting to do this for years. I have been doing it personally for years, but to actually put it together in a presentation. And I'm not the greatest presenter. I mean, I have no delusions here. So I'm doing the best I can. The information is top-notch information to know. It has to do with looking at Christianity through the red letters of the Bible rather than through the Baptist or Methodist, Catholic, or what have you. It's looking at from that way out, looking at finding out what Jesus taught at the time and working our way out. And this is number 3. We have 2 other ones. There's a playlist for just this series that links at the bottom, too, of the description. But this week's edition, if you will, Red Letter Edition, episode 3 is, what did Jesus mean by binding and loosening? And that's kind of that I'll read the verse in a second, but it really kind of, what would be the word, perplexed me because of what is thought to be meant, and then what ended up happening with the church. So let me read this verse. There's actually 2 verses. He said it twice, but this is the longer one. "And I also say to you, Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven." And you would think the way it's quoted, people would say, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. But it's not. It's shall have been bound in heaven. And I'll get to that in a minute. And the second verse, Matthew 18:18, has the same linguistic arrangement of shall have been bound. Some people have used this to justify church authority to make doctrinal rulings over their own power, in their own power. But it was not a delegation of authority as much as a warning to be true to the Father's pre-existing principles. Now, that's important. It's not like Jesus, okay, Peter, I'm going to give you the keys of the kingdom, and what you decide, I'm going to bind in heaven. Like, you're the boss now. What you guys come up with, we're going to bind it in heaven. The use of shall have been in the English may sound awkward, but it's necessary to convey the Greek's future perfect passive and the force of shall. And the way you can kind of paraphrase this to bring that more Greekness into it, maybe it is, whatever you bind on earth shall inevitably have already been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall inevitably have been already loosed in heaven. So it's kind of, and it's probably because of the linguistics of the ancient Greek, which is very technical. It's more of it is, it's exhorting the apostles that, look, whatever you bind on earth, you better make sure that it's the right deal. I want you to bind on earth what has already been bound in heaven, and I want you to loose on earth what has already been loosed in heaven. You can compare this teaching to the future leaders of the called out. That's the Greek ecclesia. It means assembly of inquiry. You can compare that statement to what Jesus said about the scribes and Pharisees, the soon-to-be former leaders. And Jesus spoke to the crowd, to his disciples, saying, the scribes and Pharisees have seated themselves in the chair of Moses. Therefore, whatever they tell you, do and comply with it all. But do not do as they do, for they say things and do not do them, and they tie up heavy burdens, and that's that word binding, the same root word there, and lay them on people's shoulders, but they themselves are unwilling to move them, loosen, with so much as one of their fingers. So what Jesus is saying, that these guys have been binding stuff up, all these rituals and all these things you got to do to be holy, and then not only they themselves are they don't help the people to do all these things, so to speak. They're actually missing the greater teachings that was taught of goodness and mercy and so forth that has been mentioned. Note that Jesus said that they have seated themselves in the seat of Moses. This is a comment on their ego-based, illegitimate, self-claimed authority, yet he supports the scriptures. That's important, too. He didn't say, like, hey, these guys are illegitimate, so don't listen to what they say. He said he's listening to what they teach about as far as the scripture goes, but then do it the right way. Do not presume that I've come to abolish the law of the prophets. And if you look at our first episode, Volume 1, Episode 001, I go into this in great detail, that the laws and the prophets that Jesus is referring to is the true principles of God that have been corrupted over the years by the scribes and Pharisees. But he's talking about, I did not come to abolish those true principles of God, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke of the principles of God shall pass away until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever nullifies one of the least of these commandments of the principles of God and teaches others to do the same shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever teaches and keeps them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. And then there's a couple of, there's a famous woes. I think it's the 8 woes, is it? Matthew 23, 3-13. I'm only going to have a couple here, read a couple. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut out the kingdom of heaven in front of people, for you do not enter yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. And woe, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he becomes one, make him twice the sons of hell, and that's the word Gehenna. That's the fiery hell type of hell, as yourselves. So you have this vision of, this is what the current leadership is doing. They're going around making sons of hell. They're locking people out of the kingdom of heaven by their teachings and their all their bindings that they put on top of it. And yet Jesus says to Peter, I'm going to give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. He's telling Peter to do it right. To, when things come up, you go back to those principles of God, and that's what you stick on. You don't add things to it. You don't soften it. You don't make it harder. And let me go on here. Jesus knows there will be human temptation to seize control of the church by the flesh, so to speak, making pragmatic decisions for convenience or logistics or simple power. Jesus pointed out how the scribes and Pharisees did this. And this quote, Jesus said to him, because of the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning is not meant to be this way. So you have the hardness of your heart, the flesh, getting involved and changing the principles of God. And the leader Moses, a leader at the time, changed these things. That's not the way it was meant to be. And unfortunately, we can see how the governmental bodies of what became the church did exactly this, actually creating wars, killing other sects of Christians in the name of Jesus. If we are the ecclesia today, are we loosening the burden, or are we binding them with the same traditions that Jesus spent his ministry dismantling? Now, you can misinterpret this. What I just said, you can go like, well, then we'll just loosen everything, and then it's okay to do anything. And that's where it's important, from the liberal principle of liberating up the church. And then on the other hand, you have the super conservative side, the fundamental side, and they're hardened about the church, right? So you have the two sides of this. But this is why it's so important to go back to this particular verse. What you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be have been loosed in heaven. That's the exhortation. Not like, here's the keys, enjoy the ride. It's a very sober, serious thing that you don't want to follow in the Pharisees' footsteps and create this new hard line, all these extra things in there, which I would say would be typical of fundamentalism. Though also in that same language is you are not to make things that are not the principles of God, and say it's okay to do that. Yeah, it's okay to kill. It's okay to do this, fornicate, whatever the things are. It's okay because in this circumstance it's okay. You have to stick by these principles, and that's why I say that Jesus is harder than the fundamentalists and more liberal than the liberalists, if the word is, because of how he stuck with the actual true meanings. This is the whole point of me doing this. I've already done this in my life, and I'm sharing it. We put it that way. Is that because of all the problems and contradictions of all of the different brands of Christianity, it came from the same person, Jesus. And so let's go back to what Jesus said and follow what he said and move forward. So we're going to go back. Now, that's what Jesus did too. Is Jesus, and I went this on earlier, probably the first episode, is Jesus was talking about how the hypocrites and so forth, how you were doing things that you're not doing things you should and doing things you shouldn't, and so forth like that. So by going back and following learning what he said and moving forward, the question to be like, do you need revelation after Jesus in order to understand the principles of Jesus? And you get in churches like Catholic Church, and I believe probably the Orthodox at least, I think they will talk about having traditions and revelations that had come from it. Now, I've been looking into Orthodox Church, and out of all of those churches, they kind of have good thing that, they're kind of on the right track with this stuff. And I'm not an expert on it, so I don't want to make pass judgment or recommendation. But the idea is you have to find out what Jesus said and then learn that principle, and then it applies anywhere, space and time. In the year 20,000, in another planet somewhere around the universe, all those principles are going to be the same. And the key is to learn it, and that's what we're going back to Jesus. So when it tells Peter, you got the keys, and you have, like the Catholic Church in particular, where you have the Vicar of Christ, you have him having the keys and him making the proclamations and all this stuff as an authority. That's not what his job is supposed to be. His job is supposed to uphold the principles that God taught, and we're to learn them and apply them. And as time changes and customs change, those principles are still the same, and they apply in any circumstance. If you make it legalistic, now you're following the legalistic of the words. It takes the principle and it just lifts it out, and you can legally do whatever you want with it by using law and technicalities. And by saying it's okay, it doesn't matter. You just love and everything else is fine. You're losing sin, which comes in and kills and destroys. So that word ecclesia, they talk about that, the church, right? The word the church, the ecclesia. It's they also translated called out, the called out, the called. It's kind of like in the Greek use of the word assembly of inquiry. So we're calling out to do an inquiry to find out what the principles are that Jesus taught, which he taught accurately and corrected accurately, that have been abused or corrupted over the years. And we're to do the same thing. So we can't defer to the authority of a particular denomination or a church or their church doctrine. That's not what we need to follow. What we need to follow is the principles of God. And for my money, for my soul, I'm finding that Jesus is providing the accurate guide to finding that stuff out, to be able to avoid the legalistic ways of escalating the people inside. They're more holy than the people outside, and they're above the rules and laws, and add tough rules and stuff on the back to keep the other people down. And also the opposite of that too. So I don't know. I mean, this is kind of actually short and sweet. Which I started out, I did probably more research and reading on this than the other ones, and I thought it'd be a big deal. When I actually started to figure out what was going on, it just kind of fit into place. And again, I have the little study notes, and you could do more reading. I got a whole bunch of stuff from Matthew, Jesus teaching about these principles and comparing the scribes and Pharisees. And a lot of people in Christianity go like, well, we're free. We've been liberated by Jesus and we're free. We don't have to follow the old rules anymore. Well, the rabbinic rules, the scribes and Pharisee rules and how they do it about washing and doing all this stuff, yeah, that's all been added on, right? But the principles are still the same. And so you don't want to get washed away on either end of the spectrum. You want to be in the center. It sounds like it's a quickie. And it's like a page and a half of the notes. But it's so powerful that it solved my question of giving Peter the keys of the kingdom. So he's deciding what's going on, and we're assuming that he's being led by Jesus. And I'm sure they were. It's like when you start to go down the path and you get to the next level, that's when it starts to drift away. It's always the first generation seems to be the best. And then as time goes on, it drifts away. I mean, look at any constitution or look at any business plan of I like Google saying don't do evil or something like that. Now that they took that out, right? That was their original. Whenever you start out, you build that plan. That plan took a lot of thought and guidance in it, and you want to try to go with that. So I guess I'll leave it at that. Kind of a short and sweet. And I will be back next time when I work on the next little piece that comes up. I was going to do a show a little bit more about the modern time and what's going on, but this came up, and I'm glad because I liked it. I'm comfortable with this. I really feel I filled in, answered one of my own questions that I never really looked at for years. And I'll get into the other stuff. The principles I was going to do, I will do probably next time, is reality is not a dialectic. That'll be the title for the next one. It's not part of the Red Letter Edition, but reality, it goes all over. So I'll get into that next time. So for now, I'll say God bless, good night, and I'll talk to you later. And here we go.